Warning: the following podcast features views and opinions that are likely to trigger the extreme fanboys and fangirls who disagree with them. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everybody, to Hot Takes with Billy Business. Today, we are talking Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. My guest is Mr. Ken Napzok, who did not join me for Star Wars, but I'm glad you're here today, Ken.
I am really excited to be here to talk my favorite cinematic character, Indiana Jones, but not my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
It's interesting the wording you chose. Funny to be here because you are not here. In fact, no one that I've done the show with since Joe Starr, and I've only done a couple episodes, but these are all remote shows. This is the first show I'm recording since kind of this whole coronavirus COVID-19 thing has exploded. I really thought about, is this the best time to be talking movies? I really did. There's more important things in the world. I didn't know if it felt crass, and I didn't want to keep putting out episodes and being like, hey, check this out, look at this, download this. And I thought about stopping. But then I realized maybe, over the last couple of days, a lot of people are scared. And by a lot of people, I will make it very personal and say, I'm scared. And I think I go down the rabbit hole a lot lately of looking at a lot of what ifs, a lot of this could happen, a lot of worst case, a lot of just scary stuff out there, stuff that is happening. And I think more than anything, I need to do this for me. I need something to keep my mind going. And I went back to the basics. What is something that brings me joy, and that's talking movies, and that's talking movies with my friends. So for all of you that have checked out the first couple episodes and have told me that, you listen to the show and you love the show, that means a lot to me. And I'm doing this just as much for everyone else as I am for myself to stay sane. So that's all I have to say about that. As long as the internet is running and there are Skype and there are friends that will Skype with me, this will continue. Ken, you have anything you want to say?
Billy, you're a hero, is what I think you're trying to say, right?
I'm basically just trying to say, forget all the first responders and the medical people. I'm the real hero in this situation.
And forget the grocery store workers who might be the greatest Americans among us right now.
The true front line in our generation's great world war.
I'll tell you what, I think we all should bring a box of cookies or whatever to our local Target employees. But no, man, in all seriousness, I know what you mean, where you said as a content creator, that phrase we all hate. But as someone who, you put stuff out there, you produce things and all the things you do for fandom, you in the real world, you kind of think it's not super important, but that stuff is important. It is a part of the tapestry of our society. And that's why it's going to be great when baseball returns or sports are back up and running or comedy shows are going. The first thing that gets back to normal, I think, is laughter and entertainment. And we have the power to keep doing that. So you might not have a cape on, but you're doing a good thing. And I'm happy you're confronting your own fears to do this and talk about movies.
Well, consider this my empty arena WrestleMania episode.
I still can't believe, and we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, and I think it's a good thing. I'm going to be watching, but I can't. It's hard to comprehend right now.
I think today's movie, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, is an interesting choice, and I kind of think in a strange way, as you're watching me touch my face, because I can't help it, I've now all of a sudden become so much more itchy than I ever was before. But I think today's movie is very timely because, as I was saying, this is kind of my outlet for how I'm feeling. I want to talk about movies. Temple of Doom was very much on the record by Spielberg and Lucas, an outlet for their feelings of what they were going through in this came out in 1984, but this would have been made around 83. There's divorces, there's breakups, and this movie is a very dark, very kind of different take on Indiana Jones. Now, I want to ask you, because you're I won't say you're older than me. You're more distinguished. Being slightly more distinguished than I am. Do you
I'm slightly more at risk than you, Billy. Say it. Say it.
All right. Being someone who maybe should isolate more than I should. Do you remember Temple of Doom coming out in theaters? You would have been a kid, so was this around? Like, was this something that? Because this was also, this and Gremlins kind of gave birth to the PG-13 rating. Do you kind of remember seeing this and what your thoughts were at the time?
I think my mother was part of the reason that this PG-13 came about. Yeah, I saw this in the theaters. I had seen Return of the Jedi in the theater. That's one of my first theater experiences that I remember, including seeing the movie Annie in theaters and E.T. Those are the vague memories I have. But I do remember my dad, and I think maybe another dad, took me and some friends to see Temple of Doom in theaters. I was not super familiar with Raiders. I was, again, young, 7 or 8. But I remember being absolutely terrified, absolutely just kind of upset. And that's also why I probably wasn't allowed to see Gremlins, and still to this day have not seen Gremlins, just because I did not grow up with it. It was like barred from our house. Little devils running around, and little Kenny just saw a heart get pulled out of a character in a movie. Nope. So I am literally that generation affected by this movie and that rating, or lack of.
You know what's funny about Gremlins is I had never seen it until Hal Rudnick and I went to a really weird. How's this for a double feature that makes no sense? It was at the Egyptian. It was Batman Returns and Gremlins, and we both walked out. We're like, all right, that was weird.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So for me, Temple of Doom. Well, let me go back. If you didn't know, my friends Ed Greer, Ron Swallow, producer Bill, they do the Nerd Goat podcast. I chose Indiana Jones as my Nerd Goat. I'm with you. I think Indiana Jones is actually my favorite cinematic character. And the reason why, and I said this on the show, and definitely go check it out if you're interested in hearing more about Indiana Jones on a kind of a macro level, but the reason why I love Indiana Jones and why I'm not really a James Bond guy, and I know that Spielberg wanted to make a James Bond, right, and Indiana Jones was kind of what they came up with and did instead. But the reason why I love Indiana Jones is that he's an academic first, and he gets his ass kicked a lot. And he, of all the movies, I think Temple of Doom is the only movie where he actually gets the thing that he's looking for, and it's like it's delivered to where it's supposed to go. Because right, in Raiders, he gets the Ark of the Covenant, but it's locked away at the end. And then in Last Crusade, he gets the Holy Grail, but it's lost when the cave crumbles. And in Crystal Skull, it turns out to be an alien head, and it flies away. So this is a guy that we are trained to see, like, we love his adventures, but he loses a lot. So I love that about the character. Temple of Doom, I kind of feel like, is the one where there is kind of a pattern to how these movies go. And I appreciate breaking the mold and not feeling the same every go around. But from the get-go, this movie feels different to me in not a good way, because I really feel like they try to actually make him James Bond in that opening scene.
Yeah, you're right. Club Obi-Wan, which I do love the sequence. I was just watching it today before we recorded, and I'm up with that. I'm there with the movie as the plane takes off and everything. But yeah, you're right. It's such a change, and I'm okay with Indy in a suit. I got no problems with that,
sure,
or a tuxedo. But it is such a drastic change from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Probably very intentional. Makes sense. Let's take a new direction, but. Yeah, it's just the tone. Something's always kind of been off for me. I think there's also some really bad things in it, just on screen, and I think even Crystal Skull, which I'm not going to sit there and die on a hill that it's better than people think. I get if you don't like Crystal Skull.
Which, by the way, you can go check out the episode Josh McCouga and I did, where I did die on that hill.
You die on that what? Do you think it's better than?
Oh, yeah, I love Crystal Skull. I absolutely love Crystal Skull.
Yeah, no, I got, and I'll be honest with you, I have not seen Crystal Skull since I saw it in the theater, and I'm tend to correct that. There's no reason. I walked out of Crystal Skull going, okay, yeah, I actually liked a lot of stuff, and I remember kind of looking around virtually and kind of literally and going, oh, we're not supposed to like it, and I just kind of left it on the table there.
Sure.
But I remember saying, even some of the very maligned things, and there's some things I don't like in Crystal Skull, but even some of the maligned things in Crystal Skull, I would say to friends, how is that any worse than Temple of Doom?
Yeah, Temple of Doom. Well, so first of all, like I said, in that opening sequence with the acid and the antidote, like it does feel very like James Bond, and that's fine. I know they want to do James Bond. It just doesn't, when we're starting off all of these movies, that they always start with kind of an adventure that maybe doesn't quite relate to where exactly what we're going to be going with. But this one just felt like out of place. I want Indiana Jones looking for an artifact, and I know he was, but I don't know. So it starts off in just kind of like a culture shock. And you're just like, all right. Let's talk about Willie Scott. Willie is introduced at the beginning. I think I've said this on Movie Fights, maybe. I've said it somewhere. I think, and I'm well aware of what I am saying, I think Willie Scott is the worst character in the entire collection of all Lucasfilm. Hands down. Bar none. There's nothing worse.
Wow. I mean, even over Plo Koon and Dexter's Diner guy, Dex. It's
Well, let me explain why. There's a thing where it's like, here's the thing. People, the first time I said that, someone was like really over like Jar Jar, and I was like, here's the difference. Here's the big difference. Jar Jar Binks, I'll give you he's annoying. I'll give you he's not funny. I'll even say, sure, maybe Phantom Menace would be a way better movie if Jar Jar wasn't in it. Here's the difference. Jar Jar Binks does not undo any character traits of Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Padme. He is just there as a really annoying sidekick. Okay. What Willie does, besides just being horribly annoying, she devalues Indiana Jones, because what Indiana Jones does that I think is so cool is think about all the women that he loves. And really, we're only talking about two. We're talking about Allison Doody and The Last Crusade. And we're talking about his real love, Marion Ravenwood. Right. Both of them, razor sharp. In fact, most times, both those women are 2 steps ahead of Indy. Indy likes strong women, and I think that's exactly, the type of he needs a character to challenge him, because he's such an action guy and he's such a academic. He needs someone that's on his level. For him to go for Willie Scott and to just go for a damsel, it's beneath Indiana Jones. She is beneath the character of Indiana Jones. And it just makes you think, like, what are you doing? Like, now you've turned him into just like a horn dog, because that's the only reason why he would be attracted to her, is purely physically.
Yeah, it doesn't ring as true as the other ones. Marion Ravenwood, I think, in Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the best characters of all time. Her introduction is one of the best introduction scenes for a character of all time. Dr. Elsa Snyder is that, like, let's be honest, she's this cold, evil, and you're kind of like, yeah, all right, I shouldn't, but I would. And there's stealth to her. And yeah, you're right. She's outsmarting Indy. She's his equal in some levels. And yeah, what they try to do with Kate Capshaw, and again, look, I think she did what was asked, and this isn't a talk against Kate Capshaw and her skills, but yeah, watching it today, I'm thinking, I get what they're going for. I get the damsel. I get the very, very opposite of Marion Ravenwood, even though this is a year or so before in storyline. But I think today it would have been executed with some care. And I don't just mean that in the general sense of, hey, there's some stereotypical kind of stuff that might not play well. And there's a lot of that in this movie, which we will probably discuss, I'm sure. But specific to Willie Scott, I think you could still take that type of character, oh my gosh, I don't want to break a nail, and reach in and get bugs. And you could do it in a different way and show the growth in a more realistic way. It was a sketch character, and it does great on me.
Yeah, I hear you, and you're right. There's a lot in this movie that it does not pass the 2020 test. There's what do we call it now? Kind of the Pretty in Pink or Breakfast at Tiffany's, kind of like the cringe factor. And I kind of do think that some of it you can say, yeah, things were very different at that time to a point. Temple of Doom is still even at the time, like, this goes out of its way to be like, I don't know if I want to go so far as racist, but if you hear about the white savior trope, this is a perfect one to point your finger at, because it's this village that is absolutely helpless without Indiana Jones. And I don't know if two white men are the best people to give you a whole dissertation, but I will just go on the record as saying, like, there's stuff in here that sure has not aged well at all, but there's also a lot of it that just probably wasn't even good at the time.
Yeah. I still think you could do this with the choices of the location, of the cultures, and dance with some tough lines about Indy having to help the village. I do agree. It's often pointed to as one of those white savior trope movies, but in stories, I think you can still. I love the exotic locale of it all. Right, like, let's take Indy and put him here where we were in the desert dealing with Nazis. Now let's go cults and sacrifices and a world he's not familiar with. I still think you could. It's just the execution of it was pretty bad. Of its time, and again, I think that's okay. I'm willing to judge something of its time, and you should kind of look back on yourself and your media and go, all right, look, hey, that we've grown and we've understand the other side of some things. I think that's all fine, but there's just some moments, man. Just some moments where you're like, okay.
But I mean, the one moment that gets cited a lot is kind of that banquet dinner scene where it's just like, all Indian food or whatever is sure. I hear you. I get it. But just on top of that, let's disregard. Let's say that it wasn't culturally insensitive at all. It also is just really like, it's just stupidly done. Like, the eyeballs just look like something like your 5-year-old brother would stick a toy like in your soup. Like, I don't know if that's a George humor thing. 'Cause I also, like, as the years go by, there are some really dumb things that everyone's like, well, that was George. You're like, actually, that was Steven. He's got kind of like a 10-year-old sensibility too. So I'm not sure who's responsible for, like, the monkey brains thing. Like, it just doesn't even look good. Like, if they were trying to go for full gross out, they kind of went like, it felt like a weird, like, Nickelodeon kids gross out,
I mean, it definitely affected me. I will occasionally still yell snake surprise, but it so grossed me out that I think at 7 or 8, it turned me into a non-adventurous eater. But that is a scene that's one of the many scenes that doesn't hold up in a lot of ways. The way it's played, the way the pacing to it. It's like Kate Capshaw's off on the side having this adventure with food while Indy's talking about the real business. And again, I'm okay with the growth her character might have to go through on paper, from bougie showgirl to this. I can get it. It just, like, I agree. I think I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. So it just doesn't work a lot.
It just, I think you're being very generous saying that she has a character growth in this movie, because she truly does not at all. She is still bougie and annoying at the end. Yeah. She changed her outfit 3 times. That's literally the difference.
This is a time where we're supposed to work hard to care for the other people in the world and be nice and generous, and I'm just trying here.
You're being very nice to Mrs. Spielberg right now.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it is like telling to me that Steven Spielberg has literally said, like, this is the one out of all of them that is my least favorite, and I regret making it. He's like, other than the fact that I met my wife, that's the only good thing. I also found this quote that I really liked. Lawrence Kasdan, the famous Lawrence Kasdan, he also did Raiders of the Lost Ark, was asked to write the script, and he said, quote, "I didn't want to be associated with Temple of Doom. I just thought it was horrible. It's so mean. There's nothing pleasant about it. I think Temple of Doom represents a chaotic period in both Lucas and Spielberg's lives, and the movie is very ugly and mean-spirited. What do you think about that quote?
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Hey, at least George and Lawrence kept working together for Jedi, but did he come back for Last Crusade? I don't remember.
I'll look that up.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said in sci-fi. I mean, and it's funny, I can't directly put my finger on it other than dark and scary. But even then, it doesn't have the spark and the wink and the fun that all the other three have. Even Crystal Skull. I like a lot of the stuff and the fact that it's set in the 50s and deals with aliens or pan-dimensional beings or whatever you want to call it. I think Last Crusade and Raiders are the great examples of just wow, what a fun wink, nod, crazy adventure. It's why I look up to the Indy as a kid, even though he's imperfect and probably wrong and and probably doesn't treat people right at home. I still look up to Indy, and Temple of Doom just does not have that spark. There's some funny moments. I love the moment where they're in the plane and she's like, "Can you fly a plane?" And he's just like, "No, can you?" Like, very hopeful. I thought that there is some great Indy moments in it. But just overtly not. Look, I don't know. Pat Roach gets killed, in crazy ways all through these things, right? But there's something more brutal about being squished in a rock squisher than a plane's rotors taking your head off. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It just doesn't work for me as well.
So Lawrence Kasdan did not come back for Last Crusade.
Okay. I didn't. Okay.
But, it's interesting when I had Makuga on to talk about Crystal Skull. In his defense, I think he said this is not one of his favorites, but I mean, then it leaves you only like half of them then. But he said that one of the things that makes Indiana Jones or an Indiana Jones movie for him is like it has to be centered around a historical artifact, and so one of his a religious historical artifact is how he said it. And one of his biggest hangups was he didn't really think that the Mitchell Hedges skull from Crystal Skull was kind of enough of an artifact. And I think I said at the time, but it really sticks out as a sore thumb to me. Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, even the skull. But it's like these stones, they don't mean anything to me. I bring in no kind of cultural awareness of them. I'm not even 100% sure if they're a real thing. I don't think they are. I think they're just like invented for this movie. I could be 100% wrong. But it's just like at the end of the movie, with Ark of the Covenant, it's like, yeah, I would have loved it if Indiana Jones would look for Noah's Ark or something like that. But at the end, he's just like, hey, I got your baked potato back, Like they also, it's strange to me. They do this runner, or at least they make it seem like it's going to be this arc of Indy, like, I realize the power of the stone and here you go. It's, it shouldn't belong in a museum, but it's like, they never really play up that like he was ever in doubt that he would give it back or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is what they really could have done with this one. If you really wanted to show, especially if you're going to go that this is a prequel, you really should have played up the whole time. Like Indy's like, does it belong in a museum? Does it belong to these people? You could have really dug into like what kind of responsibility does Indiana Jones have to these artifacts that he's finding? Is he robbing from cultures or is he preserving them for other cultures? And they just kind of like, again, like I said, he just kind of tosses the baked potato back to the old village man at the end of the movie. And then just like all the Ewoks, the kids just come and storm them. And that's the movie. And I just feel like it's missing the historical part of it. And when you miss a lot of the historical part, it misses a lot of the academia. And I feel like the academia is kind of what makes these things fun. I went to a wedding last summer, and it was in France, and there was the place where the wedding is rumored to potentially be the burial spot of the Knights of the Templar where they put the Holy Grail. It's one of the last places. And the fact that
Nice.
I'm like, ooh, it could be, but also, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I have that mystique now, and I credit that to Indiana Jones, where
Yeah.
I don't feel that way about Temple of Doom.
Yeah, that's a good point because, yeah, he's never in the classroom at all, right?
Never,
In Temple of Doom? Never. And again, that might be a opposite. Let's try to take this in a different direction, but just also speaks to their frame of mind of, look, the character can certainly go out of the classroom. It's not that I need it, but I know what you're saying. It's a different pursuit. I know it's about the kids and support, but even today. So again, I haven't watched this movie. I mean, if I've watched it more than 10 times, I don't remember it in my life. But I did watch it today, and I had when Molaron's explaining a little bit more of the stones and that there was 2 other stones buried down below, and that's why the kids were digging. I think that's the first time in my life, and I saw this in '84 in the theater. I think this is the first time in my life I was like, "Oh, that's why the kids are digging."
Yeah,
I just thought he had kids down there,
and they're just like they hold on these shots of just these kids just getting whipped, and Indy just is waiting. Like Indy waits like for this kid to get whipped like 3 times before he's like, do I throw this rock at this guy? It's like, yes. What are you doing? Like he's beating up a kid that hasn't eaten in 4 years.
Yeah,
except eyeballs.
And snake surprise and jello insects.
I definitely understand what Lawrence Kasdan said when he said this is kind of a mean-spirited movie, because when you think about it, it's, you know, one of the great things about the Indiana Jones movies too, and my train of thought is leaving the station and going into another section, but it made me think as I was watching this, it's really oddly slowly paced. And one of the things that I loved about Raiders and I loved about, you know, the subsequent Indiana Jones movies is that it is trying to harken the spirit of the Saturday matinee serials where people would go every week and it would end on a cliffhanger. So it just felt like you were getting 20 different cliffhangers all in a 2-hour movie. Whereas this movie feels like it doesn't really start until like almost 40 minutes into it. And I just feel like the pacing of this one doesn't feel like a serialized adventure. It starts off that way, where you kind of get the big nightclub shootout, and you're like, okay, I see it. But then it's just like, oh my God, it takes forever for them to get to that palace.
There's a long time on that march to the palace, huh? After they go meet the villagers and everything. And again, that's fine. But yeah, get the elephant scene and everything. Yeah, you're right. It does kind of seem, even if it's not as long as we're actually thinking it is, it's this slow diversion to it. Yeah.
And then, like you said, you know, once we get to like, okay, we're at the palace, we're finally going to figure out what's the meat of this movie, because we're 30 minutes in and we still kind of don't know. Like, we know that they're looking for the stones, but we need more information. Right. And it's being cut away to like stupid gags as that information's coming at you. So it's hard to pay attention.
Right.
The other thing about this movie that kind of bugs me is, no pun intended, is that
hey, a lot of bugs in the movie, guys.
I'm gonna be a dad, so dad jokes. The thing is, like, a lot of criticism came to Crystal Skull, and I actually I totally hear this and I get it. You know, Indiana Jones is. You know, they are these big exotic adventures, and Crystal Skull, you know, there are definitely a lot of it where it feels very soundstagey, and a lot of people said, oh, Crystal Skull just feels so small, feels so caged in. Have you not seen Temple of Doom? This is the most claustrophobic action movie maybe that I've seen ever. Like, it's just like one set, though. It's one set piece. It's a cool set piece. But it feels like it feels more like the Indiana Jones like stage stunt show at Disney World than it feels like an actual Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, I've never really thought in those terms, but it's like even because like, and there's a lot of things that we can certainly talk about things we love in it. Short Round, we haven't talked about Short Round yet. I like a lot about Short Round, but the kart race, which the kart chase thing, which I know was supposed to, was a concept stuff for the first film. It's not so much that the special effects don't even hold up as much, and they don't in some situations, but like you're right. It is a lot smaller. It plays smaller now. The water coming out, everything. Yeah, you're right. Where the other ones have a lot more wide open feel. Last Crusade, you're in the middle of the desert. Everything's going on. Yeah. I kind of like that point. I never really thought about that.
It's one of the things that I do like about this movie. I do think of all. Maybe I'm talking myself out of it as I say it, but I do think it has kind of the most memorable and the strongest villain of the Indiana Jones movies. As much as I love Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark, Belloc is, he's a bad guy, but he's not memorable in the sense of if I were to go up to someone who, like, have you seen Indiana Jones? Oh yeah, who's the bad guy? I don't know. I just remember him looking for something. But Mola Ram, I think, is a great villain. It's just such a bummer that he's not kind of, all the villains in the other movies are kind of, they're going, blow for blow with Indy the whole time. They're usually both looking for the same thing. Whereas Mola Ram, we don't get him until, 45 minutes-ish into the movie. Right. And he's just kind of like annoyed that Indy is there. You know what I mean? There's no personal kind of ties to it. Whereas all the other Indy villains are personal, but in terms of just like aesthetically, and certainly in terms of like, this is Indiana Jones's Bane. If Belloc was the Joker, where the fights are going to be great, but Bentley they're going to go, tit for tat. Mola Ram is Bane, where it's like, oh, I want to see them really go at it.
Yeah, no, I agree that he's striking. He is as a kid, he haunted me. The heart scene is terrifying.
How is the heart scene any like? I don't ever want to hear your nuke the fridge or Aliens when he pulls a guy's heart out of his chest and he's still alive. I don't want to hear it.
Well, it's funny. No, it's funny you say you compare it to that. I don't have a problem with the nuke the fridge scene because of the jump out of the airplane in a raft scene, which
100% agreed.
Looks horrible now, and I get at the time a little different now. You'd probably CGI it or whatever. I get it. I'm not going to hold them to the flames for that, but it looks horrible. And the fact that they land and then they fall again and again and again, it was as a 7-year-old, I was like, that's awesome. By the time I was 10, I was like, that wouldn't happen. It's just,
I think by that point, if you're 2 movies in, if Raiders of the Lost Ark, at least the ending, should have told you, like, this is not, the laws of physics are not going to be obeyed in this.
Right.
And then this movie really doubles down. So it just blows my mind when people get to Crystal Skull and they're just like, that would never happen. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way you made it this far,
Yeah. Say with the following with the tank and then in The Last Crusade, which I love, and he's hanging there. Like, how does that even happen? But like, it's movie magic moment and I love it. But even like the stuff I don't like about Crystal Skull is more decisions, plot stuff, some special effects with the ants or whatever it is. It's not the big things that everyone seems to be going for. But I'm down for a good alien story. So I think that's why I like Crystal Skull a little bit better. But the bridge scene's memorable. There's some things I want to give it credit for, and to finally see the cart chase paid off from concept art to put in this movie, it's fine. But I remember watching it again a few years ago as an adult. I'm like, I haven't seen this in a long time. Maybe I like it a little bit better. Nope, I don't.
It's just like, again, like I like the bridge scene too. I actually think it's funny that a lot of the most iconic images of Indiana Jones are from that sequence. Him with kind of the sword and the ripped sleeve and everything.
Yeah. And he's really buff. Yeah.
Right. What's just kind of like puzzling to me, or just like, especially, I guess for the movie, you're like, okay, this is fine. But when you look at Indiana Jones as like all 4 pieces of the puzzle, it's such like a low key third act. Like the stakes are like, okay, you're on a bridge. Whereas before it's like, holy crap, all these like supernatural ghosts are coming out of a box and melting people's faces. And this is just like, he's hanging from a bridge. It just seems like a sequence that would have come, 50 minutes into any one of the other movies,
That's a great point. I actually do like that point. It ties a little bit to what you're saying about how they're not both searching for, Indy's rescuing these items, which I'm fine with, but the fact that Molaram has no connection to him other than he's there. If it was Walter Donovan leading the search for the rocks,
right?
They're all on the bridge. There's some of those personal stakes, and that's why this movie, I think, it doesn't have all that personal touch, and that's probably a testament what Steve and George were going through. But that bridge scene. Now that you're saying it, it's like, that is the final thing, right?
And you're just like, like crocodiles? I literally just saw a guy's face melt off in the end of the last one. This is just a crocodile? True. This is like beginner level for Indiana Jones. It's just very strange. You said, we've been talking about how it's a darker movie because they were in a darker place. And I get that. And even George was like, like Empire Strikes Back, the second one, you have to go darker. I get it. But here's the thing. The darkness comes out in characters' kind of like actions. Like, it's more violent. It's scarier. The darkness is coming out of Spielberg and Lucas, but it's not changing the character of Indiana Jones. If Indiana Jones had some massive sort of like character growth and I could watch Temple of Doom and be like, wow, I now understand why he does certain things or feels certain ways in Raiders of the Lost Ark or Last Crusade, but it doesn't. Like, the darkness is not serving the character. It's not serving the story. It's not a darker chapter certainly not because the stakes have risen. It's literally darkness because those guys are depressed. This is like a cry for help more than it is like a sequel.
Yeah, no, that's where and it's just even kind of the colors of the film, even as a kid, like, I know there's a lot of red, there's a lot of vibrant red, but you think of Raiders and Last Crusade, the sand, the sun, not that it's a fun sunny beach adventure, but it's this different feel to where Temple of Doom is just darker. The tones, Indy, himself looks a little. The clothing comes off as darker to me too, and it's just it's claustrophobic at times, like you said. I think you were kind of talking about earlier too, and that stuff that it's so weird that. But even as a kid, I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not a sure. I'm just a kid. I'm just like, I don't know.
I guess I'm just like, as I get older, I'm trying to figure out. It truly bothers me that I love Indiana Jones so much and I want to love this and I just don't. I've said before, like, well, even a bad Indiana Jones movie I'll still take it. And I don't know, watching this today, I was like, I don't see myself watching this again. I just flat out just do not like this at all.
I told you, I don't think I've seen this start to finish more than 10 times in my life. Raiders, Last Crusade, it's well past 50, and this is my favorite character. And again, there's stuff in it. Growing up, the bridge scene stuff, some of that's iconic stuff I attribute to Indy, and I do like Club Obi-Wan because it is a different kind of Indy, but I liked a lot of lines, a lot of dialogue. I can get behind a lot of that. I do like Short Round, but I don't think of it and I don't miss it, and that's always telling. Even when I came around on the prequels, and I loved the prequels of Star Wars, I missed them at some point. Sure. I was even back then like, well, no one's watching. I'm going to slip in a prequel and I won't admit it to anybody.
Right.
Even though I see all the faults in the movies and everything, but I'm there for the story. I'm there for the characters. Temple of Doom, never been the case for me.
Let's talk about some of the things that we do like. We've mentioned Short Round a couple times, but I do. Look, we've already stated there are problems with representation and all sorts of stuff in this movie, left and right. Yeah. But I do like the idea of this sassy little. Usually, I hate kids in movies. I hate them.
Sure.
It tanked Iron Man 3 for me to the point that it's my least favorite Marvel movie. I generally, if you put a kid in your movie, I'm like, nope, not having it. I do like Short Round. I think he actually it does open up a side to Indy that is fun to see. Kind of like he treats him more like a Robin, than he does like a son, which I think is fun. But I also think he's in one of the only kind of emotional moments of the movie when he when he sees Indy turn to the dark side or whatever, Indy's poisoned and he hits Short Round, which again, woof, that's punching kids to get your emotional moment. You're really reaching, but you do I think that kid, I think this was his first role. I think his brother auditioned and he went with him. And it's one of those, I think that's literally an episode of Full House. But he does such a great job that you believe that him and Indy have this really weird Doc Brown Marty friendship, and it doesn't that could come off as really, really strange. What are you doing, man? But you don't really think about it while you're watching the movie. You're like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I think, look, this is the era of Goonies and all that kind of stuff. And didn't this performer, gosh, I should have looked up his name. I forget. He was in Goonies or something like that, right? If I remember, he went on to a couple things. Someone will correct us, I'm sure. Wag your fingers, please. But point being, he is a kid. It is of that
Goonies.
time.
He was Data.
It wasn't Goonies. So it is of the time, but Indy, to me, like you said, treats him like Robin. There is a bit of, he is on Indy's level in a way. The fact that Indy is relying on him to drive that car, and he's got the bricks, the wood blocks tied to his feet, and that Indy's just fine with it. He trusts that. This is going to be, of all the things going on, this kid can drive this car. And coming out of a movie where, again, where they're trying to do a lot of opposite things or different directions or presenting you something new in Temple of Doom, which I do respect as filmmakers and creators. You've just dealt with Sala and Marcus Brody, who are two just great sidekick characters. And now you're going to go the opposite direction with this little kid who's maybe even more competent than Marcus Brody at times. I'm on board for it. It's fun. I hope as they do this fifth one, if there's a way Short Round comes back as an adult some way, I'm on board for that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the one thing kind of missing from Crystal Skull is this is not, I'm not bagging on Mutt Shia LaBeouf at all. I think Mutt is fine. I don't think Indy is surrounded by supporting characters in Crystal Skull, and we love Marion because we already know who she is. But Ray Winstone's character is just, I feel like they were trying to make him sort of a combination of Brody Sala. It doesn't work, and I do feel like Indiana Jones is great when he has someone to play off of. I think that's what makes Last Crusade such a fun movie, is watching Indy play off of his dad. For this one, I love a very similar but different kind of relationship that he has with Short Round. It's contentious, but they also, he loves this kid,
Oh, absolutely.
So that I agree with you. I also think, look, even though when you're watching it or when I'm watching it, it feels few and far between. The action sequences in this are, like you said, the mine chase doesn't get enough credit for how cool of a sequence that is. And it almost bums me out that the movie doesn't somehow end on that note. Cause that is like that could have been a really cool third act. It leads into the third act or into that final thing, but it just seems like it's way more cool than the bridge.
It's 100% more cool than the bridge. I never really thought of it because I don't see this movie that much. I never really thought of it in these terms that you're putting out here of that's the final thing is Indy. And again, it's a great sequence and him cutting the bridge and it's memorable. I remember it as a kid, but yeah, you're right. And Indy's built on the serial thing of adventure problem, and all those kind of things. So I can see why on paper it works, but compared to some of the other bigger moments, I don't know, like if one of those crocodiles flew out and was actually a demon, maybe then, I don't know.
I mean, I wonder if they ate Mola Ram, are they now voodoo evil crocodiles?
Yep. See, that's what we wanted. We wanted zombie crocodiles.
Also, what really just kind of chapped my ass about that bridge scene watching it today, which I completely forgot about, it is the precursor to the Jurassic Park 3 ending of, oh my God, the military just shows up and it's over. Yeah.
The British.
When all the army just comes and they're like, yeah, it's over. It's like, where were you guys? What have you been doing? It's just like Jurassic Park 3. It's like, why didn't you send the military in the first place? It's the first thing you should have done.
The captain is the captain's there, right? He just shows up unexpected.
Right, yeah.
He's part of the feast and all those things there. So yeah, you're right. You're yeah. Though I love it in the one of the Indiana Jones Lego games. It's kind of fun when they show up, but yeah, not so much in the movie.
I want to talk to you. I talked with Makuga about this, and I kind of want to get your take. This is just a bigger overall Indiana Jones thing, not necessarily Temple of Doom, but in this new era with Disney buying Lucasfilm, and I just find it strange that Indiana Jones, even if you look up Indiana Jones like on Amazon or go to Disneyland, like there's not a ton of merch. It doesn't seem like Indiana Jones is cool anymore. And I just want to know, like, why do you think Indiana Jones just like isn't cool? They haven't done any new comics. They don't really pump out new novels. Like, is Indiana Jones just no one cares anymore?
I mean, the ride's still popular at Disney.
Sure. But would that ride be cool even if it was just like Max Adventurer,
I've always said, because it's easy to compare this to Star Wars. It's of the era and some of the people behind it, right? But Star Wars, a lot of things, even Star Trek and everything, have tried to keep up with Star Wars in terms of toys, merchandise, ongoing passion. And I think Indy, the movies, stand up as a series on their own if you want it. Even though I always say Indy is my favorite cinematic character, I don't own a ton of Indy merchandise. I don't have Indiana Jones shirts. I even have tried to buy the hat. I've gone to the trader, the marketplace at Disneyland. I've been like, today's the day I'm going to buy it, and I'm not going to wear this. It's just different. It's different. I think there, the same way there's James Bond fans, but not James Bond action figure crazes. The Indiana Jones figures, which they did try to make in the early '80s, just tanked. The re-releases around the time of Crystal Skull just tanked. I think there's a different connection and passion for Indy, even in fans like us, that just we don't have the same way we do for Star Wars. We're recording this on Skype. I literally see, action figures hanging from your wall like wallpaper, and I bet there's not an Indiana Jones one,
No, I think I have the collection of the, when Crystal Skull came out, they tried to there was some new movie figures, and they also sprinkled in, you could get classic characters too. And I remember ordering them all because I was like, I don't want to go toy hunting. I could have walked in, at any point to any store and bought every single one, and I would have been the only one. You're right. It's strange because Crystal Skull did, as much as people don't want to admit it, it did really well at the box office. So, it's very strange to me that Indiana Jones seems to be this thing where they'll go and see it, but they don't kind of live it like they do. I just find it also strange that why is there no cartoon series? Why is there no video game? I can't believe we don't have a next gen console game for Indiana Jones.
Right, because there has, over the course of time, there's been a lot of books and some video games, I remember, for computers back in the day, PCs, and then the Lego games are great. I think a lot of people love, especially the first one. I think the second one wasn't as good. But, yeah, even now, like give me a Red Dead Redemption indie game. I'd rather have that than a Red Dead-style Star Wars game. I really would. And it's just not there. It's not present. There's not a call for it. I know, it's just the weird, again, I go to the James Bond thing, where you love the movies or you don't love the movies, but let's say you do love the movies, you're on board. Daniel Craig's my favorite Bond, whatever. With Indiana Jones, like you mentioned Belloq earlier, he's great, right? We love him. I love when he shows up in Hot Fuzz, by the way, as the priest with the double shotguns.
I love when he shows up in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, as Ivan Ooze.
There you go. But it's not like Tarkin, where I could tell you right now, well, Governor Will of Tarkin was born on this planet, and he did this as a kid, and did it, and Belloq, I'm like, yeah, he's the guy that Indy fought.
I guess it's so funny because, you say, Indiana Jones is kind of lumped in with Star Wars because they're both Lucasfilm, and they're both special effects films, and they were both coming out at the same time. But they actually probably have more in common than any other franchise because they're both based on these Saturday matinee serials. Both of them
Right.
are both these kind of like pulpy adventure type stories. So it is strange to me. It is strange to me that you can give me a dissertation on Wolf Tarkin, but Belloc, we're kind of like, he was, apparently Indy and him just didn't get along. It's like, I just don't know why there isn't that robust lore for Indiana Jones. I don't know if it's because, you can't make too much of a lore because half of it is like historical fact, so there's not as much wiggle room to make things up, but just strange to me.
It's true. I mean, look, and I actually loved the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. I really did. I watched it every week it came out. I think it's a good series. I haven't seen it, and I don't know where I could even see it right now. I don't know where it's available. But even then, the love was different. The love for it was different, and it was just more watching the history, watching the adventure of this character. I wasn't worried about the extended canon of Indiana Jones, but it'd be fun to have some adventures because they almost would work. They would be more standalone. There's even if you hated Chapter 4 there, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, a fifth one. Doesn't have to be super connected to it, and you can just have its own separate adventure, and you can enjoy it. And there's hope for that movie. So it does work a little bit different. I don't know why.
Yeah, which is so funny because it's like, well, we just saw aliens fly away. Huh, that was crazy.
Right.
Well, what's next? Like no lasting impact, probably of Crystal Skull. Yeah, it's just if you choose to marathon all 4 movies, even if you extremely dislike Crystal Skull, it will still feel in line with 1 and 3. Temple of Doom feels like such a crazy outlier to the point where it just feels like, do you remember, I can't remember exactly what it was called, which one it was, but they made a James Bond movie with Sean Connery and it was not canon to the James Bond because it's like they had the rights to that story.
They had the rights.
And a couple of names. Like that's what this Indiana Jones feels like. It's like someone else made an Indiana Jones movie and they're like, you can use the name Indiana Jones and you can use the same actor, but everything else we're not giving you access to. Yeah. That's what this one feels like. And I get it. That's why, our friend Lon Harris, this is his favorite of all of them. I understand like, there's probably just like, it's so different that people love it. Batman Returns is my favorite Batman because it's just so bizarrely not Batman. I get it. But from what I want from an Indiana Jones movie, Temple of Doom almost actively decided not to do any of it. And almost like, I don't know, this movie just, I feel like the whole time it's just like, oh, you want to watch an Indiana Jones movie? Oh, fine. I'll make you watch that. like this movie feels mad at me while I'm watching it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, and I know a lot of people that love this movie. So I'm never here to take anyone's joy away from something, but I think you and I are the same page of when I think of Indy, I do not think of this. I think of chasing artifacts, fighting Nazis, and maybe commies in the 50s. And I think that's where I go to in my brain. This one, I just skip over it. And it is weird. The fact that it's like a prequel, the fact that it's a year before, it's almost as if they're doubling down on it's its own thing, because it doesn't even feed. And not that I would need it to do it, but it's not like it really, really tries to give you some insight into Raiders on Indy's character, other than maybe you can see why he's still holding out for Marion in his heart.
I would venture to guess 75 to as high as 90% of all people have no idea that this movie takes place before Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I mean, I don't know if I learned until high school in the 90s, in the mid-90s.
Yeah, it's so funny because, the reason that they set it back was that they're like, well, we wanted a different villain from the Nazis, and we felt like the only way you could do that was to, take it back before that all started. It's like, I get it, but also I don't know if anyone thinks in those terms,
Right. Yeah. No, it's an odd choice. I think that was a George choice too, because why not?
Well, it's just like, you're right. If you're gonna do a prequel, like lean into it. Like I want to know something that happened in this adventure informs something that comes later, or else there was no need to make it a prequel. He's clearly somewhere far away from the Nazis anyway. It could have just been a side adventure, you know?
Yeah. I mean, for some reason, I keep going to like the Marion Ravenwood stuff. And again, not that, I mean, there's always been some little touch and go with Indy. I don't know, dating a 15-year-old. We never figured that one out. Maybe we shouldn't, but there's some weird conversations between them in the bar. But I was a girl, or I was a child, I think she said. But
she was an 18-year-old, just, Indy searched barely legal on his porn site, and she had just turned 18 when they started dating. That's the only way that I can still love Indiana Jones, is if he waited until her birthday to start dating her.
Just looking at a stopwatch or a pocket watch. Oh, we're good. It's weird. So not that I need that answer, but that he's not dealing with that. There's no emotions, and that just sets Indiana Jones on its own path versus Star Wars being this really, really connected big universe, and things are going to echo and the poetry of it all and all those things that people sometimes make fun of, but makes it powerful, makes it lasting. Indiana Jones is lasting as a character, not necessarily all the movies. Though, I mean, they are, but Raiders is perfect. We know that, but.
And you know what? As much as I don't really care about this particular film, which I think I could be wrong. I may be amalgamating different Indiana Jones things, but I think Harrison Ford might have been injured on this one, and it just kind of was.
He hurt his back.
Yeah,
yes.
And it was not an easy shoot. I'm not going to discount, if it wasn't for this movie, the PG-13 rating wouldn't exist. And I kind of think in a historical context, it's kind of cool that an Indiana Jones movie, ushered in kind of a wave of change,
It's part of its legacy. I mean, again, I am 100% the poster child for that. I came out of that just terrified.
This is one of those things where you can't overstate that everyone's taste is very different. Roger Ebert gave this a perfect 4-star rating when it came out. There are a lot of people who just love it. And if you do, awesome. That's great. I'm willing to bet the people that really love this movie refuse to acknowledge that Crystal Skull is part of the saga, and that's fine for me. Indiana Jones also is a trilogy, 1, 3, 4. So I'm going to play your game, and I'm just going to leave this one out.
I'll raise you, cut out too. Yeah. No, it is. Look, I definitely have some moments I remember, isn't it weird? It's weird, right? I can headcanon it, but doesn't he reach for his gun and it's not there? In Temple of Doom, whereas in Raiders he does the famous shoot the swordsman scene.
Yeah, it's like a callback for the audience only. And it's so strange because it's the same thing that drives me bonkers about Star Trek Into Darkness, where Benedict Cumberbatch is like, my name is Khan. And it's shot so dramatically because they're waiting for you to go, but it's like Kirk and Spock would have, okay, great. I don't really care what your name is. It's something that's only for the audience, and it has that built-in moment for you to be like, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I can always play with emotions. I guess the headcanon is this is just something he always does. And in Raiders, he was very lucky to have the gun there, and he made sure of it this time. I don't know. But yeah, there's this. But again, the movie has some moments. I'm thankful that it has introduced a short round. I would love to see him come back. That'd be fun. It gave us Dan Aykroyd in an Indiana Jones movie. I'm good with that too. Club Obi-Wan, I'm okay with it. I totally agree that it's so Bond-like, even to where he has a waiter as a contact who's gonna, help him get the antidote. I mean, it's Bondy for sure. And I know that was probably intentional, but yeah, I'm there for it. But I'll never throw a glowing stone at anyone who loves this movie. I'll let them do that. I'll let them enjoy
Anytime I see a baked potato, I will think of Temple of Doom.
Yes, so true.
So there you go, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Not my favorite Indy. Probably one I'm not going to say I'll never watch it again. That's ridiculous. I'm sure at some point.
Sure,
It's like, for me, this one's like Batman v Superman. I watch Batman v Superman about once a year since it came out, because I'm like, maybe this will be the time that it just clicks for me. Never does, but every year I'm like, I want to love this. There's got to be something, and I feel like I will do this with Temple of Doom until the end of time. But Ken, thank you so much for it's so fun to talk to you about something that's not Star Wars. I love talking Star Wars with you, but
yeah, and we're always always try to weave Star Wars into the conversation, all you Williff Tarkin fans. But I love Indy. I don't talk about Indy enough. I know Alex Damon over at Star Wars Explained loves Indy. It's a great character. I was just down at downtown Disney before the world shut down, and I was in one of the little art studios that they have, little galleries there, and looking at all the art. And I turned around the corner, and there was a giant Funko Pop Indiana Jones, and I didn't get it to get to the end of the story, but I just remember I just had this like, it's Indy. And that's how much I do just love the character, and we'll watch Indy whenever I can.
Yeah, I truly hope that in the next, I don't know, I understand Disney's not going to double down, invest super hard in Indy right now because they don't own the movies, and if you can't put Indy 1 through 4 on Disney Plus, it's kind of hard to start making a commodity out of it. So I wouldn't be shocked if someday they make a deal like they did with Marvel to get those movies if they have a long-term plan. But I hope that there's opportunity down the road for Indy to become more than just a nostalgic favorite. I want a new comic book series. I want the kick-ass video game. I want toys. I want to be able to like go on Amazon and just find an Indiana Jones t-shirt, because that's harder than you would think to find. I hope Indiana Jones becomes cool again, because I think Indiana Jones is such a cool role model that you can be smart and you can get your ass kicked, and it doesn't matter that you're like Batman and you always find a way out. Sometimes Indiana Jones just lucks out, but he always gets back up. And I love that about Indiana Jones. I think Harrison Ford is I'll say it, I think he's a better Indiana Jones than he is a Han Solo. Yeah.
No, I'm there for that. And Han's my guy in Star Wars, but I think he really just relished being Indy, and I think he did a good job with Crystal Skull too. So I'm curious to see if he does it one more time.
One last Star Wars connection. I did love, I can't remember which comic it was, maybe you will, but there was that kind of like Elseworlds comic where Indiana Jones finds the remains of Chewbacca and Han Solo. I love that so much.
Yeah. Well, he finds the remains, and it isn't Chewie in the wilderness is kind of like a Bigfoot?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
It's like the origin of it. Like, I love that kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be canon, and it probably shouldn't be, but I love that kind of like, because that's the kind of stuff that we would do as kids. It's like, what if a long time ago was actually like a billion years ago from our timeline, and Chewbacca is Bigfoot now? You know what I mean? Yeah, that stuff's fun. All this stuff's fun. Hopefully you guys had fun listening to us talk about Temple of Doom. Coming up next week, I don't know. I love teasing future episodes because I want you guys to know what's coming and to get excited about them. This is going to kind of be the new norm. I'm going to try to get as many guests as I can that can do this through Skype, and we'll try to get through them. I do know that Daredevil is on the back burner for one of the episodes coming up in season 3, and also I don't know when this is coming, but it will be coming soon. I will be talking with Chris Schrader from the Hey Do You Remember podcast. He did the Prometheus episode last season that you guys, one of the most requested guests I have to come back. We are tackling all 3 Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy movies in one supersized episode. So a lot of stuff coming up. Guys, stay safe, stay calm. We're going to get through it. And I already feel better. Hopefully you guys feel better listening. And I will see you guys one way or another somehow next week.